Hey, IOStux here. In case you didn't know, on top of offering Overwatch and Valorant sessions, I now also offer aim coaching, mental coaching, and coaching for coaches. So no matter what game you play, you can now get professional help to significantly improve aspects of your play. Reception of these new coaching services has been absolutely stellar, and I'm booked out for weeks. And if you want to see the massive results my other clients have, check out iostux.com to book your first session today. Talking to the one and only legendary Mr. Harvey.
You are, and I am talking to the legend himself, IOStux. So
Yes.
Pretty legendary VC.
I am truly a very special human being, I guess is one way to put it.
Congrats on your exam, by the way. That is insane.
Thank you. I know. You know, sometimes I have those moments. Honestly, the reason I wanted this grade is for the irony, because the grading system in Germany, in high school, we get graded from 1 to 15. So 1 is like really shit, and then 15 is like perfect, you know?
Okay.
But because that isn't confusing enough, once you go to university, they flip it around. So in university, it goes from 1 to 4, and 4 is the worst grade, and then 1.0 is the best grade.
Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's very ironic, because I can now officially say that my grade between high school and university hasn't changed, because I had a 1 in high school and now I have a 1 in university.
Insane.
You know, I'm doing the long con here, okay?
It's delayed gratification.
Very
did
true.
You did bad in high school just so you can get this.
Exactly. You know, it's like when you intentionally place in bronze so you can make a bronze to GM stream. You know, this is what I live with. Live for. Okay, I need to...
just real quick, are you recording this, by the way?
I am recording this. Very, very correct.
Okay, cool. You don't mind, right? I just want to keep it so that if I need to go back on anything, I can just go back as always.
Well, yeah. I mean, I just like recording them. Who knows? Maybe the session is going to be super amazing, and then I'm going to be begging you to upload it. You know, so it's always good to have these recorded. You never know. Okay, there we go. I have everything here. Mark that way. So, what can I do for you?
Okay, so, well, obviously I came here for the coaching training thing, right? Because
yes.
I'm relatively, new, I would say, to coaching. I've been, doing, VOD reviews and stuff for, a month and a bit. You know, in a server.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I just want to get better at it. I think I really like teaching the game a lot.
It is.
You know, I think it's interesting to VOD review and kind of break stuff down. I think that's as cool as playing it, right? I'm no amazing player, but I want to get better at just VOD reviewing in general and helping people out.
It is pretty enjoyable. Yes, I can give you that. So what do you hope to gain out of it? Just personal gratification, or do you eventually want people to give you OnlyFans coupons for it, or what's the end game here?
Well, that would be a bonus. But I don't know. I just enjoy doing it, so I guess I'll do it that way. And then if I can, I guess, make money out of it, then that is just kind of a thing, a bonus thing on the side. Because I always when I've played games, not just for Overwatch, I've enjoyed just helping people. Oh, I'm gonna look at your game and I'm gonna tell you what you did wrong. Right, or what you did right. I don't know. It's just something I naturally do. It's not I just stumbled upon it and said, "Oh, I'll do this then."
Okay. Then I'm quickly gonna go read what you wrote in the forum, and then after that we can get started. Unless you have any questions.
Well, that was from a while ago, actually.
Well, I guess I can read it, and then you can just tell me if it's outdated. I asked you to share a bit about your history, and you said, ever since I began playing Overwatch, I was super interested in the theory side of the game and constantly looked for guides. Watched Owl to try shot calling for my friends in rank. I began doing VOD reviews for friends and VOD reviewing myself with no knowledge from YouTube sources I believe to be reliable. Building on that, I began thinking about my own ways of how the game should be played, as well as started one-on-one coaching in GG Bootcamp.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, what do you believe is your biggest weakness as a coach? I lack game knowledge, micro knowledge on DPS heroes simply because I gravitated towards concepts such as composition, macro, etc. So I learned much more about tanks and support. I also feel like what I lack is a methodology to analyze and figure out how things work. Okay, that's fair. I guess the first question would be, if you're focusing on being like a private one-on-one coach, why the emphasis on macro play?
I guess it wouldn't really be. So I decided to want to do like micro, because when I took the form, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Well, there's obviously going to be a big difference between like private and like team coaching, right?
That's why it's in the form, yes.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It's after that I started thinking about it. I was like, okay, well, I should probably start learning much more micro stuff, right? And like individual stuff. But it was just before I just found the team like kind of stuff more interesting, because of, you know, me just playing with friends. I'm like, hey, we could like try this, you know, and hey, you know, if we run this comp, it'll be good here, and then etc. etc. So I just gravitated towards like macro.
So what direction do you want to go in?
Definitely I want to go micro, and more so like private coaching.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
good. Well, I'm not going to repeat the same disclaimers that I repeated in like the previous sessions.
Sure.
But your coachee pass obviously also applies here, I guess, worth mentioning. Now, do you have
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just about to say, like, I'd add one more thing to the weakness part. Yeah. Is that, like, I'll kind of give you an example. So the other day I was, like, reviewing, like a Silver Sigma player, I think. And like, I could probably just list out everything he was doing wrong, but I just really don't know where to start sometimes when there's like a lot of stuff happening. So like, you know, because obviously like below like a certain elo, like they're gonna have a ton of mistakes, right? Mm-hmm. So I end up kind of going like, what should I even tell them, right? You know, because it's useless just to tell them everything. You know, they're not going to use everything.
True.
So I guess that kind of goes into methodology, I guess, you know, with kind of figuring out what I should talk about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess I can answer this quickly because it's a pretty simple question.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so basically, whenever you're having a one-on-one with someone, I'm assuming that you have like a general idea of what you actually want to talk about. When you're starting out, you can't really do exploratory reviews. It took me like a few years, I think 2 years, until I could do them, you know, with some semblance of confidence. Exploratory basically means you don't prepare for the session. You just assume you're going to be able to find the biggest issues. You know, which you can do no problem with experience. It's just when you're starting out, your confidence might not be very stellar. So it's in your best interest to kind of...
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. It's just better to kind of take it slow. You also... so assuming that you prepared, obviously you're going to find multiple things. Generally speaking, you only need to avoid both of the extremes. So you don't want to talk about too many things. Like if you talk about like 7 or 8 different things, if you have like feedback about every single game concept, you know, if you're coaching a DPS player, you tell him about every single ability, his ultimate, his positioning, his movement, his target focus, it's going to be a little much. So even if all of those things are issues, which they're going to be, I mean, that's why people are usually low.
Yeah, that's why they're not rank, right?
But you also don't want to focus on one thing exclusively for 2 reasons. The first one is if you only focus on one thing, it can get a little monotonous and almost demoralizing, like the session, because you're basically just spending 60 minutes pointing out the same mistake over and over again.
Right,
And you can do that with some people, but you need to have a good feel for whether they can handle it. Most people can't. Unless you have like built up rapport with them or like a lot of trust and authority. So you don't really want to go over just one thing. Generally speaking, you want to pick out like maybe 2 or 3 things. Ideally, the ones that you think are like most impactful or most important. The important part is that what you mention during the session can be completely separate from what you want him to actually work on. So the it's not like a structure, but this is just kind of the way that most of my sessions end. Usually there's like 2 or 3 things that are wrong, but then I very explicitly tell them that, if you fix all of these things, you're going to get to this rating, whatever he wants, no problem. But despite that, you need to take it one step at a time and then focus on, this issue first. And generally speaking, you need to, there's 2 ways you can approach this. Okay, so you have let's say there's 3 things that he needs to improve on. Let's say it's positioning, target focus, and ult usage. Okay.
Sure.
There, you now have a choice to make, because obviously you're going to communicate that to him. And because you only gave him 2 or 3 things, it's very motivating, because it kind of outlines the general road ahead of him. He can kind of visualize it a little bit better. Whereas if you give him 10 different things to focus on, it can feel to him like, oh, there's so much that I need to do. Am I ever going to get good? Right. So even if it's technically inaccurate, or maybe it doesn't have all of the details, it's better to have a blissfully ignorant coachee temporarily than, a coachee that has all of the information and all of the facts, but who's just overwhelmed with all of those facts, and he's going to be kind of demoralized because it feels like there's so much stuff to work on. Okay.
Sure. So
you choose a few things, and now obviously he needs to prioritize on one of those, because you can't really focus on 2 things at once. And there's two approaches you can take, and this depends a lot on who you're working with. You need to either choose, so option 1 is you choose whichever one is going to give him the most improvement per second in terms of actual results. So with the example earlier, let's say that he plays Sombra, and obviously with Sombra, target priority is pretty important, but ult usage is kind of the main thing you would be looking at. No point in having good target focus if you can't fucking EMP,
Right.
But so in that case, if you're just looking for raw effectiveness, then you would tell them, okay, improve your ult usage, right? But sometimes you're going to get into situations where the best thing to improve on in terms of results won't be the fastest thing to improve on. Okay, yeah, so an example can be if a player has a specific mechanical problem. This happens especially when you work with lower rank people. They're going to have a lot of mechanical problems, maybe movement, and they're also going to have regular ability usage and everything. And it can be very dangerous. Of course, they need to fix their mechanics first, because that's the biggest issue that they have. But it might be too big, and it can be very demoralizing, because they finished their session with you, and after 3 weeks, it feels like they haven't really gone anywhere. Okay. And most people are going to evaluate their first session, not even necessarily by results. Surprisingly, it's very easy as a coach to kind of feel pressured into, oh, I need to make sure that this guy wins his next 10 games after the session. That's not actually true. It's important that you don't stress yourself, because ultimately people want to leave the session with the feeling that they know what they're doing wrong, that it's fixable.
Like a path.
Exactly, that they have a path, and they want to feel like they are progressing on that path, right? So especially when you're working with new people, you don't actually give a shit about them climbing. You just want them to see progress, What happens very often when I coach players, actually, is they might be hard stuck for a little while, maybe 2 or 3 weeks after their session, they haven't really climbed any SR, but they tell me that, their gameplay, it feels so much better. They've made so much progress, the things that we talked about, they can so it's kind of a big puzzle where sometimes you need that final piece in order to actually see the result. And it's just important to prioritize a sense of progression at first over raw improvement, which is also why it's important that, and this is, I guess, kind of one of the biggest mistakes that people do when they start out coaching. And it's kind of a conundrum, because one of the issues is that when you don't have a lot of rep or authority, people are going to judge their session with you on perceived value, and perceived value depends Not SR.
Okay.
I mean the session itself, and perceived value as
okay.
in how much information they're getting out of it. So it's a little bit of a conflict of interest because you have some clients who, if you give them like, you know, I like to call it the IOStux dilemma, as arrogant as that might sound. But
No. That's
basically,
the perfect name for it. Go on.
what it means is that the better you get, what coaching really is you want the player to leave the session with the feeling that the game is much easier than he thought it was. You know,
so like
because
simplifying it for them.
exactly, because that's very motivating. At first, when they start playing the game, they're going to be very overwhelmed. A lot of shit is happening. They don't really know what's going on. But then ideally, after the session, they need to be like, of course, like, what the fuck was it? Like, why am I overcomplicating things? Like, I just need to follow the basics. But the problem, and that's like kind of your job as a coach, to make the game simple. You know, you don't want him to play 100% perfectly. Exactly. Yeah. You want to give him like, it's like diminishing returns, you know? You just want to get him to 90% knowledge level because that's more than enough to climb, and you can get there much faster than like pushing them all the way to 100% and giving them all of the nuance in like the situations. But the IOStux dilemma is that when you get like a little too good at it, eventually you're going to run into the issue that some people are going to feel like they didn't get, you know, like they wasted their time with the session because the advice sounded too simple. You know, and like as much as it sucks, ultimately any coaching is better than no coaching. So if you feel like the person you're coaching is like a little bit, you know, they're like intellectually demanding, you know, they feel like they don't get a lot of value unless they're being bombarded with like tidbits and knowledge, you need to like kind of adjust. Okay. And that's, I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that every coachee is very unique. And you need to, like, at the start, honestly, you need to kind of accept the fact that you can coach two players the exact same way, and one dude is going to climb like 500 SR, and the other dude is going to quit the game, even though you gave them like the exact same advice. Okay. Yeah. And it's important that you don't get into this like romanticized idea of coaching where you're like this super duper big brain dude and you just vomit knowledge down their throats and then they're going to be like super big brain. What coaching, like it's coaching, you know, it's not teaching. If it was teaching, you could put it into a YouTube video, you know? So what that means is that you're basically, it's like a game of in of itself. You need to analyze the person you're working with. You need to kind of classify their personality and how, like it sounds kind of toxic, but how you can best manipulate them for their own good.
I get what you mean.
You know, right. This is the biggest problem when you're talking about coaching. Like it always sounds really toxic from like an outsider's perspective, but it's a little bit like when a doctor is like, you know, he really wants to help his patient, but the patient has no fucking idea about medicine. So maybe you need to like simplify things a little and, you know, kind of
dealing with a customer or something.
Exactly, like just being a little bit more inviting, you know. And again, that's only at the start, right? Like this as you build rapport, as you like have more appointments with the same person, things get a lot easier, and you don't really need to think so much about all of this stuff. But the biggest failure point, you know, and like I whenever I watch those like Twitch VOD reviews on YouTube, you know, where like a streamer just puts up like a random replay code and reviews them.
Yeah.
It's always like incredible. Like it's very unactionable, and it's very demotivating, and it's overwhelming, and and you want to avoid.
I get what you mean.
You kind of want to avoid being like that. But enough theory. Let's actually do some real practical stuff. Unless you have any questions or anything you want to talk about before we get into that.
Well, I could ask questions later, or we could do it now. Hold on, I wrote some stuff that I made sure I needed to ask.
Then go ahead and ask.
Sure. Okay. So okay, so you were talking about you actually gave a good example. So you're talking about like the streamers, like when they sit down and VOD review, right? And they're like,
Yes.
oh, you gotta ult track and you gotta make space and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they don't know how to walk or press the bloody controller yet, right? You
Yes.
gotta give them like the simple stuff.
Yes.
So when would you say the game becomes like complicated, like a bit more nuanced? So when you have to start deviating. Does that kind of make sense? So like you can tell a metal rank like soldier player to go on a simple cycle of okay, you're gonna look for an angle, you're gonna shoot, when you get low you're gonna go back and etc. Like just as a stupid example, okay? But like when does that kind of get like nuanced or a bit more complicated?
When you start coaching teams,
Okay.
like it doesn't solo queue never really gets nuanced. Solo queue is really just
Okay.
like a skill check on like individual ability. And Overwatch does not have a lot of individual complexity or depth.
Sure.
You need to understand like all of the aspects of your character and maybe like some macro basics like map knowledge and ult economy, but like nothing advanced,
Yeah.
And once you have that down, it just comes down to consistency and execution and mechanics and mindset and all of that stuff. But the game doesn't actually get any real strategic depth until you start scrimming. And the only reason why top 500 ranked has strategic depth is because top 500 ranked is basically scrims because everyone knows
It's full of those
everyone.
players, yeah.
Exactly. But yeah, when you're just trying to get someone to GM in solo queue, there is no depth. And I know that I don't even mean that in like an arrogant like, ooh, I'm so smart, this is also simple for me. Like genuinely there just isn't. You just need to know. I mean, like you need to know how to play your character.
So like the way I approach it, like when I tell people like, to do with ranked, it's kind of like your how do I say it? It's like kind of like your testing range, kind of like where you're kind of taking an ability and you're just trying to push yourself to how like far you can use it or how well you can use it, right?
Basically,
so is that that's a decent way? Okay.
It's mostly it consists of limit testing, like kind of developing a feel for what you can do. It's trying to make the game intuitive, which you get by like having a basic understanding, like with coaching, for example, and then the rest of it is just experience. Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Next question.
Okay. So this is kind of a funny question. So I've never had one before. So when you have like a difficult student. So how would I describe a difficult student? So like one who's kind of like questioning everything you say, or like the famous "What SR are you?" student, right? So how do you like it could be yourself, or what would you recommend to deal with a student this way? Or that is like this.
I mean, okay, so like I wouldn't say it's difficult. I mean, like if he has those questions, like okay, so first of all, no one's forcing him to like get coached by you. So it's very easy. It's very easy to like for example, I think I'm actually going to upload that one. I had like a session recently with like a French coach. It was also a like session for coaches. And like that was a session that like I guess you could call difficult. I even put a disclaimer at the start of the video where like it could be considered difficult. So, people shouldn't judge. Because there's like a lot of questioning and disagreements at first and like confusion and all of that stuff. The first thing you need to understand is like the dude is getting coached by you. It means that when he's asking those questions, it's not because he's like necessarily doubting you or because he thinks you're like shit or unqualified. It's just because he wants to like make sure he understands everything properly. It's better to give people the benefit of the doubt. Okay. And usually like the SR question comes up before you coach them.
Course, yeah.
Like if he agrees to like spend an hour of his life with you, then he should probably do that research first. It's a little awkward to do that. Like,
yeah. That's fair enough.
And yeah, other than that, I mean, like, sometimes people ask me what my rating is, but then I send them my Wikipedia and they're like, oh, okay, never mind. You know, so like, but obviously you can't really
like
pull that card.
Contenders coach or anything, you know?
Yeah, it's a little, it's always a very interesting question.
I'll just say my pedigree is I coached my friend's dog. There we go. That is enough pedigree for you to know.
That is.
I guess my last question would be, so in terms of just getting game knowledge itself.
Yes.
So the way I've always done it is I've basically just watched everything that I thought to be credible. So like so there's like a YouTuber or who is a former, I think, Open Division coach called Temporal. Who basically just uploads every VOD review he does ever, right? So he uploads like 5 a day or something. So I'm like, well, okay, this is a treasure trove, you know? So I just like went through that, like, you know, go through those, or like, you know, Spilo is really good. And I know he was one of your coaching students at one point. Yeah, I go through his and then etc. So is that a feasible way to do it? Or, you know, is there other ways that I can just acquire knowledge other than just playing the game or, you know, asking around?
As a coach, you can't really leech. The problem is that those sessions that are being uploaded are targeted at the player, not at other coaches. Yeah. You know, I mentioned earlier that the whole job is to simplify for the player. So it's kind of like trying to learn math by just looking at the final result.
Yeah, okay.
You know, you don't really know what he's looking for in the VOD. You don't know how he prioritizes important things from unimportant things.
Or how he's getting the info. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't know what he's thinking about when he's phrasing the advice or when he's timing it and all of that stuff. So unfortunately, it's like kind of useless to watch other people coach. Ultimately, you need to develop your own style. And there's like 2 sides to it. So obviously, game knowledge-wise, ultimately, the only way you can develop like a strong sense of game knowledge is by gaining experience, you know, like looking at a lot of gameplays. And eventually you're going to start. I mean, you have like, I'm assuming you don't have a 60 hertz monitor, you know, you have like a 144 or 240 or something. Yeah. It's kind of like when you have like a 144 hertz, you know, and then you swap back to 60, it's like you just know. Like you can just kind of tell. It's kind of the same thing when you watch like a lot of high level gameplay just on your own. Like top 500 gameplay or something. And then you go and all of a sudden you review this platinum player.
It just feels wrong.
Exactly. Like you can just kind of feel the difference. As vague and abstract as that might sound. But that's kind of how you gain experience, because eventually you'll be able to look at that platinum level gameplay and you're just going to feel like, okay, this is not something that a high level player would have done. So that's kind of the first step. And then the second step is, you know, that's how you gain like the raw information. But obviously you can't just give that to your coachee. You know, you can't just tell him, oh, you know, like a really shit form of coaching is to just point out a mistake and then tell them what they should have done instead. Because at that point, they could just like watch VODs themselves. And it's like really time inefficient. You need to kind of give the conclusion to them. You know, save them the effort and time of like manually reviewing all of those games. So basically simplifying the game so that they have a framework they can use to make decisions. You know, like of course he can look at like 200 Zarya graphs. And then eventually he's going to develop a feeling for like what differentiates a good Zarya graph from a bad graph. But your job as a coach is to spare him those, you know, hours of looking at Zarya graphs and to give him like a framework that 90% of the time, if he applies it, is going to get him a good graph. And
so
again,
like a formula almost.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're just you're trying to make it simple. And again, it's not about accuracy, because when you're coaching like people one-on-one, you start with like a foundation. You know, you don't want him to like become the best grav Zarya in existence, you know, who always gets perfect graphs. You just want them to get
to a point where it's like acceptable, and then you move on to like the next thing. You know, you want to build wide, not tall, because that's how you see progress.
I see.
Okay.
That makes sense, yeah.
But yeah, so you need to kind of develop your own understanding of the game.
Yes.
And then in terms of actually, I guess, applying that advice, again, you can't really get that by looking at other coaches.
Sure.
For two reasons. A, because I don't trust any other coaches, so I can't really recommend you to look at them.
Yeah. Okay.
And
makes sense.
and two, and this is like the less arrogant answer, I guess, would be that even if you like look at them, the delivery depends a lot on rapport and like reading the other person. So for all you know, maybe you know when Spilo, for example, does reviews, I think his reviews are like subscriber only, you know. So, or at least that's how most people do it. I'm assuming he does it this way too, which means that most, you know, the people he reviews are like, they like him.
He knows them, kind
you
of.
know,
Or, yeah.
Even if he doesn't necessarily know them, like he knows that they like him. You know, there's like no skepticism. Like these people watch his stream, you know, because they respect his opinion.
I see.
Okay, and that allows him to like, and he has like a certain persona that those people are going to be familiar with. You know, if like if he goes all buff hard tech on like some random dude who just bought a session from him on Fiverr, like that dude is gonna be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You know, and so that's kind of another reason, because it's very difficult for you to get an accurate image of the what the rapport is. So the sad truth is that with coaching, a lot of it ultimately comes down to like kind of grinding it out yourself. Obviously, I wouldn't be offering these coach sessions if there weren't like techniques and, you know, advice that I could give. But as with playing the game, you know, ultimately you need to just grind it out. And the reality is, like, honestly, the biggest problem is that a lot of people at the start are like scared of giving out trash advice. You're going to give out trash advice for like years, you know? Like, even if I look back on sessions that I uploaded like 3 years ago, so like kind of the middle of my coaching career, like those sessions, they cost like $170, you know? And I rewatch those sessions nowadays, and like they're factually correct, you know? Like, I'm not stupid, like they're factually correct, but the delivery was like so tone deaf at times, you know? Where I thought to myself, dude, like, what the fuck are you doing? This is not how you get him to like actually listen to you. Because again, you kind of learn as you go, but and the reality is you need to kind of accept that you're going to throw a lot, you know, and it's easy to get kind of scared of that because it feels like a responsibility. You know, these people trust me to help them. But being a coach is kind of like being a doctor to a certain extent. Like, have you noticed that people don't say, you know, I work as a doctor? You know, they say I practice medicine. Like, the word practice is in there because no doctor is like ever like just the doctor, you know, who knows fucking everything. This isn't fucking Grey's Anatomy or Dr. House or whatever. They practice, you know, they grind it out, and they regularly go to like seminars and they read papers and shit, so they're up to date, you know. And being a coach is kind of the same thing, where like you just kind of start out as this shit your coach, and you need to take solace in the fact that ultimately, no matter like how shit of a coach you are, you're not going to be worse than like just no coach, you know? Because ultimately, if you give ass backwards advice and your client is dumb enough to like not question it and follow it, like that's just as much their fault as it is yours, you know? So at the start, like, don't feel too responsible for like giving out bad advice, because every coach, when they start out, they give bad advice, you know? And that's the only way you can get better, you know, because you give bad advice and then, you know, the dude is like kind of throwing, and then you like look at his replays and you see that he's like following your advice perfectly, but apparently it's not quite working how you expected, you know? And then you learn from it and you ask yourself, okay, you know, was like the advice wrong, or maybe I explained it wrong, or maybe it needs more nuance, or maybe like the advice is right, but there's like a bigger issue that I should have focused on first, etc., etc., etc. Okay. That said, that brings us to, I think, kind of the most interesting part, actually. As a coach, one of the most valuable resources that you're handling, actually, is going to be your players' confidence. Okay. And if we stick with the theme of things that I've named after myself because I think way too highly of me, this is something called the Iostux effect. And
wow.
yes, we had the Iostux dilemma. Now we have the Iostux effect. Basically, it's pretty simple. It's actually, I didn't come up with it. Actually, some of my coaches, I think Evie came up with it. Basically, what it means is that people, they like get a session with me, and they can't get a VOD because the moment that they like schedule their session, they just keep winning.
Okay.
And then they like show up to their session and they're like, dude, I've been trying so hard for the past 3 days to lose, but I just can't lose, you know?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, you're welcome. Thanks for the money. See you next time, you know? But basically, the reason this happens is because when you do your job as a coach correctly, you're going to provide your clients with confidence, you know? Because for a lot of players, confidence is like a very, very big factor in fast-paced games, because confidence directly ties into how quickly people make decisions. And one quote of mine, because again, I'm basically fucking Gandhi at this point. One quote of mine is that Overwatch isn't a game about executing perfect plays. It's a game about executing mediocre plays perfectly. And what that means is
I absolutely agree.
It's really dumb to like overanalyze a team fight and then take like 10 seconds to prep, and then by then, you know, the enemy team just engaged and you're like on the back foot, you know. But when you do your job properly, you know, then just like, you know, I've reached a point where like some of my clients, they're like on a losing streak, but just the hope that they gain out of scheduling a session, you know, because they know, okay, once I have that session, like all of my questions are going to be answered. You know, I'm going to know what's going wrong, and I'm going to know what to do. That gives them enough confidence to like stop doubting themselves and stop second guessing themselves, and they like start winning. You know?
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm telling you all of this is not to stroke my ego, but because it is one way you can be effective as a coach when you start out, even if you don't necessarily have a lot of like experience yet. Because even if you give your clients outright incorrect advice, which is going to happen, it's perfectly normal, as long as you can boost their confidence, there's still a very good chance that they're going to see positive results. You know, whenever I have a session, like the way that I measure success is like, when someone has a session with me, I want them to like, kind of, like, I want them to just beg to get out of the session. You know, but like in a good way, not like, you know, not like this is torture, but like, okay, you know, are we done here? Because I really want to go in game and I want to like implement all of these things. That kind of, you know, and that's like a really good sign, because at that point, like, they're not going to, you know, this is like something that happens very often. And I, you know, some people are going to like, you know, I'm kind of calling out some people here. But they DM me after their session, not after, but like a few hours after. And then they tell me, dude, your session was amazing. I immediately went on like a 10-game win streak or something, you know?
Sure.
But like the whole point behind the coaching is that they know what they're doing wrong, and then they need to like work on improving themselves. Coaching isn't like you just get the coaching session and then you're immediately better. It's not like you're turning in a quest and you get like a level up and you're stronger.
It's a catalyst, yeah.
You know, exactly. It's like, okay, now I know what to do. Now I know how to grind and get better, you know. But still, some people, they DM you. And again, this is going to happen to you as well. And they're going to be like, dude, I just won like 3 games in a row. Really stumpy. And again, like, it's important that you're just like kind of honest with yourself and you understand, okay, this is not because like he's actually better at the game. it just means that, well, either A, he got like on a lucky win streak, which can happen, but more often than not, it just means that you've managed to boost his confidence, and that alone managed to increase his performance. And that is very useful information to have, because if a player has very strong positive results immediately after their appointment, it tells you that potentially you might not want to focus your coaching around making them smarter, but just improving their mindset and their confidence, you know? So tailoring your advice in a way that maybe doesn't teach him the game at the fastest pace possible, but that teaches him the game at a pace and in a way that maintains morale and keeps it high. Because players...
Like sandwich method kind of thing.
Exactly, because players who feel good improve faster. You know, they're going to be more motivated, and they're going to be more tilt-proof, and they're probably going to put more hours into the game. All that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get that, yeah.
Well, next question, I guess.
That's everything. That's all the questions I have, and if you can answer it, fine.
Excellent. Then, do you have a replay code for me, or should I just pick one out?
I do. Hold on, I'll grab it now.
Okay. What kind of replay code do you have?
Oh, it's just a ranked game of an Anna player. Is that okay, or?
Have you reviewed it before?
No.
Okay, good. Then send it over. Actually, no. Don't send it. Actually, yeah, just send it over.
You want it? Okay.
Yeah, just send it over. Because what we're going to do is we're going to do a little... normally you would do it and then you would screen share, but because I'm recording, it's a little awkward if I like record Discord, because I'm always super paranoid about accidentally opening up like steamy DMs. So we're just going to do it this way.
I'll give you the code here. There you go.
Got it. Okay. So this is the role-playing portion, because you've had way too much fun. Now it's my turn. I'm assuming are we reviewing Vanda Eule or Fury?
It is Wonder. I have no idea how to say that.
Vanda Eule, traveling owl. Yes. It sounds a little like Native American, you know. Hello, I'm traveling owl. I'm smoking out of my pipe and putting on native tattoos. I think I just did like cultural appropriation, but I meant it in like a complimenting way, because Native Americans are cool as shit.
True.
So you can see the screen?
Yeah, I'm watching that. There's no sound, but that's...
We don't need sound. We don't need sound. Okay, so we're going to do a little bit of role-playing. You mentioned earlier how sometimes you have difficult clients. Oh, fuck. I'm going to be the most difficult client you've ever had, dude.
Oh, no. Okay. So, you know what? Let's see if you can top the dude from yesterday. You know what? We'll go.
It's okay. So, do what you want to do. If you want me to play, you can play. If you want to ask me questions, you can do that. Just imagine I'm like this Anna player.
Sure. Okay. So, this is kind of weird now because like you're actually the coach, but not the
well,
same
no,
time. Okay.
you're going to like coach me when you say something stupid. I'm gonna tell you.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So, Mr. Student, if you could tell me in about a sentence or kind of like a paragraph, what do you think Anna does?
Heal people.
Okay, so, well, that's something she could do. Okay, so Anna could heal people because she got her, her biotic rifle or whatever. But when we talk about Anna, Anna's kit is not good just because she can heal people, all right? Anna's kit is actually really strong because she has an anti-nade and she can actually damage people for like fucking, I don't even know, like 70 damage a shot, which can basically 3-tap a squishy. Okay? And in the context of ranked, healing people is not what's going to basically win us fights. It's basically by being proactive and putting damage down range and helping our team by landing, really thick anti-nades, or hitting really big nanos.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. First of all, don't use numbers.
Oh no.
Don't use
Oh,
numbers
okay.
unless they're like relevant. Like, it doesn't matter if she deals 70 damage per shot. If you're like trying to explain something that is relevant for numbers, like can Riptire kill this character, then yes, you should mention the numbers. For this, not so much. And then also,
Would it be fine if I just say she can literally just kill people in 3 shots?
no, this is the second part. You use your language is not very condensed. You're using words like literally and basically a lot.
Okay.
They're filler words. You want to keep your sentences very concise because they have more punch that way.
Maybe I'm just being nervous or not, but okay, yeah, I'll write that down.
You want ultimately you want
Yeah.
the coachee to spend most of the time talking.
Okay.
Okay,
make them-
because
okay.
because if you force him to talk, he's going to feel more engaged. If you do too much talking, like if he gives you a 1-sentence answer and then you talk for like 5 minutes, only do that when it's like really necessary, because it's very, or if you like know he's going to be able to like deal with that. If you don't want to risk them just kind of, losing attention.
So that talk more. Okay. I can see that now with how you coach, like in an actual VOD view.
Yes, very true.
Okay.
So go on. You were telling me about how Anna can like pew people.
Yes, Anna can pew people, right? So the way we're gonna win games is not by pumping people full of heals. We're gonna win games is hitting fat antis and killing people with our gun. Does that make sense? We need to find a
Yes.
balance. Okay.
Yes.
All right, we can continue. Ooh, okay, so could you rewind, I guess a little bit? Okay, so let's just pause. So what you do here is, you threw the nade, and then you decide to take some, so you're basically doing some, okay, I'm messing up so badly.
Yeah, you are.
Alright, I promise, I'm not normally like this.
It's okay.
Okay, so what you're doing here is fine. So you're trying to, go for kills and stuff instead of, and, putting down damage instead of healing your team. However, if you just zoom out really quickly, just look where you're standing. Do you think this is an acceptable position to be as a support?
Well, I think I just went around the corner real quick for the nade. I didn't plan on staying there.
Okay. Well, the thing is, you're literally standing on it. I said literally again. You're standing in front of the cart, and there are no tanks in front of you, which is an issue because tanks basically just soak all the damage. Because people shoot pretty much whatever is in front of them, and tanks can do that because they have high health pools. So
But you just told me that I should like carry games by throwing nades and shooting people. So how can I do that if my tanks are always AFK?
Okay. It doesn't matter if where your tanks are, you just need to play around them. So right now, look at where your Sigma is. He's not, in the front, right? He's behind you. So instead of being brain dead and just walking in front of him, just stay in a corner behind you. You can go behind the rock, you can just go behind the payload or something, and just wait for your Sigma to take that space instead. He's pushing payload, he is a tank, he's going to push the payload forward right now. All you gotta do is just wait until he does something, and when the enemy pay attention to him, you can do the pew thing and throw your nades. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Sure. So throwing the nade, in front of cart where their whole team is, staring at you. Not a great idea. We can continue.
Are you
Or
sure?
did I say something dumb?
No, it was fine, but it's like you ended a little abrupt. Don't you want to like comment on the nade?
Well, I thought explaining that it was a bad idea because their tank wasn't there would be a bad, would be enough. So I will just comment on the nade. It's
Okay,
just
so
being
so
stupid,
okay,
right?
so this is where like you get into prioritization, and this is where you need to do a little bit of like advanced analysis. So what rating is he at?
This is 3.2.
Okay, so the thing is that you need to. Okay, so there's two different angles you can take here. You can take the angle of he was overextending and he needs to play more passive and like chill with his tanks and whatever.
Yeah.
And then the second angle that I probably would have gone with is the aggressive angle, where you don't focus too much on the positioning because like, okay, I'm gonna go why in a second, but basically focusing on like the nade itself. The reason why I would take the active angle is because it's a very tough sell to tell someone they've overextended when they didn't die for it. So here, let me
write that down.
Yeah, because ultimately, like, it doesn't matter if you're right. What matters is like what the player hears. So right here. I'm recording. You don't even need to write down, but yeah.
Oh, I'm so stupid. Yeah, okay, yeah.
Oh, good.
Let's go on.
So right here, like, yes, of course, this is like, if it's an overextension, like, yes, it's a little cocky, but whatever. But again, the important part is he's not going to be very receptive to that advice if he literally took 0 points of damage.
Even if it's a stupid thing to kind of do.
Exactly. You can look at like one particular moment from multiple angles, okay?
Yeah.
That are like equally valid, but one of them has like the proof behind it, so it has more punch, right? So you can take your positioning is garbage angle, but he's going to be like, okay, but because his argument is going to be like, okay, but I didn't die, so like even if I didn't do that, like how would that help me climb if the people here don't punish me for it? The angle of going for the nade, on the other hand, is going to be more effective, okay? Because either maybe you can find an opportunity where he could have used his nade in the future. I don't know if that's going to happen here. Probably not. Okay. An example situation, for example, would be if he like uses his nade here, and then immediately after the enemy Doomfist and Genji jump in. Right.
Okay. So then, like with something with like really bad or impactful causation, kind of.
Exactly. So, you don't just want to like give feedback out of nowhere. You want to like tell him, hey, this is what you did wrong. And look right here, these are the consequences. And then you go like 3 seconds later, and then you're like, look, if you had your nade here, you could have anti-naded the Genji who just jumped on you. Or maybe like the enemy tanks drop down, or maybe the enemy Ryan gets hacked if you have a Sombra or something. Basically, you want to focus, especially at the start. You only want to point out mistakes if they don't have a consequence, if you've established them before. So, for example, if you've already given him plenty of examples where his positioning has cost him teamfights, and you just kind of want to force it into his head through repetition, then you can point it out in these situations. But right here, it's just not a very strong argument to him. And it's not going to be very memorable. And again, the biggest resource you have is confidence and motivation. You want to give him the feeling that if he implements these changes, he's going to see a difference in his gameplay. But right here, he's like, that's what I mentioned earlier. If the enemy Doomfist jumped in, and this is like, if you watch my sessions, it happens very often. I ask him, imagine if we had our nade here, or imagine if we had our sleep here, or imagine if we had our nano here, That's like very, very punchy. That sticks with people and they feel bad for wasting their ability. But right here, he's like, I stood in front of the card for like 1 second, but nothing happened.
But is a bad one. So if he like comes away.
Yeah, so, like, if you don't if you don't have a strong angle, just skip over the mistake, because he's diamond. He makes mistakes every 200 milliseconds,
Yeah, that's something I struggle with.
So try to like filter, and at the start you'll probably have to like prepare your sessions in advance, so you can kind of spot those punchy moments. Okay.
So if when he threw the nade and it hit the shield, should I just went to the angle? Okay, your nade was awful because you just literally threw it into a shield.
So right here you don't actually have a very punchy angle at all, because he nothing happens until he gets his nade. When he makes a mistake, but the angle isn't punchy, you can still mention it, but you don't want to emphasize it too much. So what I would have told him is like, relax with your nade. Like, don't just throw it into the shield. Who knows? Maybe you'll need it later, right?
Okay.
But I wouldn't go into like a full-on, college lecture on nade usage until I actually had like a more punchy moment. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah. Keep going, coach.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. I would continue. Okay, that's a better nade.
Why?
Okay, so would this be a good time to talk about like nade? Because we've identified it's a good nade.
Well, so again, it's not like super punchy. But like it's worth mentioning maybe why it's good.
Okay, so yeah, it's good because it hit an anti plus a heal effect on your team. So, like I can just say that.
Okay, yeah. You don't want to take you don't want to take like a purely results driven approach either. You don't want to say a play is good because the results he got from it are good. When you're coaching, you're coaching the player's thought process, like their decision-making process.
Their idea, okay.
You're exactly the idea. So the problem is right here, he doesn't know why he used the nade. He just like kind of threw it on the high ground where the enemies were and then it hit people. It's true, it was like the result of the nade was nice, but we don't want to improve our players' results, we want to improve their thinking. And if you tell him this was good without being able to explain to him what line of reasoning or what decision-making process leads to good plays like this, then he's going to be like, okay, what the fuck am I supposed to do with this? Just throw my nade and then pray it's going to be a good one? Doesn't really work. Okay.
So obviously, like, let's say there's a more, as you said, like a punchier example of this. What I then explain, like, okay, so you want to be, looking for nades in a certain kind of priority, I guess. So like,
Well, yeah, the first question usually is you need to like you would ask him, why did he nade here? Like, what was his decision-making process?
Okay. And then, so if he doesn't have one, then we could say, well, here's a process you could think about.
Yeah, like
nade.
Common answers are like, I don't know, it just looked good. Or maybe he gives you like a thought process, but sometimes it's completely wrong. Sometimes people make the correct play with the wrong thinking.
That's very, very true. Yeah.
So that's why you want to like ask them how they came up with that decision, because that's how they can replicate it. Okay, continue, coach.
Yes. Okay, so why did you just drop from the high ground?
1 second,
or
coach. I need to check.
Or at least drop from where you were.
I don't know. I guess I was just jumping around.
Jumping around? Oh my god, why am I messing up so much? Okay, go back, like rewind a bit. Okay, so, from the first example when we talked about, your positioning being shit, this is another example. So if you zoom out and check where you are literally just standing in the middle of the enemy team. See this?
Okay.
Okay. So,
but it did land a really thick 3-man nade, Mr. Harvey. Didn't you tell me I need to go for big nades?
Yep. Of course you gotta hit big nades, but, we also want to stay alive, after we've hit the nades so we can actually follow up on it, right?
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you again. So basically,
I'm being murdered.
No. This isn't a bad interruption.
Yeah.
This is there's like 3 minutes left, and the client after this has like priority scheduled. No, I don't want to like rush, but okay. So let me to quickly comment on that. So it's true he's out of position, but now again it's very results focused. You're just telling him like he's out of position.
Oh, I was about to explain. Okay.
No. You want to lead with the thought process.
Okay.
You don't want to like judge the position, because the problem is that the moment you judge the position, you're going to kind of bias the player's response, and you don't want that. You're going to get the most honest response if the player actually thinks he didn't do anything wrong, if it's just like a curiosity question.
Okay.
But if
I asked him, like, why did you stand here? So, like, when I kind of ask you.
Well, yeah, exactly. You would ask, like, why did you stand here? And then, like, usually in situations like this, you're going to get the answer, I don't know. And whenever you get the answer, I don't know, that's like kind of the holy grail, because it means you can just shit out whatever you want and like shove it into a skull. It basically means that there's nothing that you need to like erase. You can just kind of build a clean foundation, you know?
Okay, so then from then on, I can explain. Oh, yeah, you want to, stay behind the tank or use a corner or something.
Yeah, so you want to give him like a very, very simple framework to start with. If he doesn't know why he positioned a certain way, it means he doesn't have like a thought process at all.
Okay.
And you don't, and this isn't where you like go in super complex and you give him a bunch of stuff. You just want to give him like one simple kind of thing he can orient himself around, right? So his positioning is basically at 0%. You don't want to get it to 100%. You just want to get it to like 60%. Okay. And we can get it to 60% with really simple shit, telling him just try to stay with your other support. And if your other support isn't there, like simple shit, like just try to stay with a teammate. Like a basic rule would be try to keep a teammate in front of you at all times. Don't ever get into a position. Just try to avoid getting into like a position where there's no teammate in front of you. That's the advice that I would give him here, because it's really fucking easy to follow.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Okay. That's, and again, when you're starting from scratch, like, because this is like very, very high impact advice. And again, he's going to be like, wait, that's it. And then obviously you're going to tell him like, well, obviously no, like there's more depth to it, but we're like building a foundation. Like, trust me, just try to keep a teammate in front of you, and then we're going to add more depth and more depth and more depth until your positioning is going to be like super clean. Okay.
Nice.
But yeah, unfortunately, if you want to get more of this amazing, disappointingly non-sexual role-playing session, Mr. Harvey,
yeah,
you do need to take advantage of the very unique iostacks.com 40% follow-up discount on future sessions. There you go. This is also very important whenever you coach. You need to like shill. Because if I didn't shill here, if I didn't go like super hard on the ads, it would mean I'm not convinced of my services and them being like worth it. But I know that this is like worth it. And I know that you are like very, very happy with this session. Like I can smell it coming out of your nostrils. So that's why
I got plenty to work on there.
Exactly. That's why I can shamelessly plug. One day you'll be able to reach,
of course.
You'll reach this level of arrogance and self-importance. And then you'll be like, yes, I have reached the stacks level. Okay.
Level.
All of that aside, I do have it recorded. I think the session was pretty good. Are you Gucci with me uploading it?
Yeah. You know what? Yeah. I'll harbor the humiliation. Sure, go for it.
It wasn't humiliating, dude. Honestly, it's okay. I didn't know how to coach for like 3 years, dude. I wish I had someone tell me how to do it, and I would have saved myself a lot of time.
That is fine. I definitely felt nervous doing it, but
it's okay. Cool. Don't